Okay, friends, we are once again going down the road of that wild ARC TBR that I've started and have so far not missed a book on. Knock on wood on that, but I'm feeling good, and it is honestly impossible not to have just a lot of cutesy feel-good feelings after finishing the book that I am here to talk to you guys about today. So today we're talking about an ARC review of That Summer Feeling by Bridget Morrisey. So thank you to the Edelweiss and the publisher for my ARC so that I could bring you guys this review. And if the name sounds familiar, Bridget Morrisey, it's because last year I think I reviewed another one of Bridget's books called 1,000 Miles. Now, That Summer Feeling is Bridget's 5th book. I have only read these 2. So I am not sure how this compares in the full breadth of Bridget's other books. However, I think that if you read 1,000 Miles and were excited for this one because of that, like I was, this book is very tonally different. It doesn't make that bad, but it's very tonally different, and we're going to talk about it. So first off, what is That Summer Feeling about? Well, it is the story of a woman named Garland who is in her early 30s and is recently, not quite recently, it's about a year or so into her divorced life. She married the man that she met in college. They were college sweethearts, and she was like, we're gonna have the perfect life, you know, season passes to Disneyland, dinner date nights. And on Valentine's Day, her now ex-husband pulled out divorce papers and was like, yeah, this just isn't working for me anymore. So after that, she moved in with her sister, Dara, and has basically just been kind of like floating around for the last year. She's been not really holding down a stable job. Right now, she is a Uber or Lyft driver. They don't say which one, but she works for one of those companies not named for copyright purposes. And she's just trying to get her feet back under her, and so she meets these twin men while giving them a Lyft or an Uber, and they are like, hey, we just bought a summer camp that we used to attend as kids, and we're turning it into an adults only summer camp where basically adults can come and either experience the nostalgia of summer camp or have the experience they never got to have as kids. And they invite Garland and her sister, and they're like, hey, what the heck? This is our life, man. So when they get there, a couple of things happen in quick succession. The first is that Garland, on the way to her cabin, literally runs into a woman named Stevie. They literally collide on the deck when Stevie trips and falls into her. And so it is a very adorable meeting, and they immediately just kind of click, decide to be in an alliance and best friends, since they're both there with siblings. Stevie is there with her 3 brothers, and they kind of have to stick together as the younger siblings. When Stevie introduces Garland to her brothers, she literally faints at the sight of one of them, whose name is Mason. And this is because when Garland was going out on her honeymoon with her now ex-husband, she ran in to a man in the airport, and she literally ran into him. A piece of jewelry broke, and when he handed it back to her and their hands touched, she had this vision of them in a camp, you know, together. And so she has this moment where she thinks, okay, I've had this vision. This is what my life is meant to be. I'm meant to be with this guy. And Stevie, his sister, wants to be my best friend. And so together we're gonna all make this happen. It soon becomes clear, though, that not all visions are as easy as they seem, because Stevie has feelings for Garland. And Garland, who is up to that point, as far as she is aware, been straight, is starting to realize that she has feelings for Stevie, and that, you know, messes up the whole vision and what she thinks about that. So before I get into like comparing this to another book, just about this book itself, I never attended summer camp as a kid, so I don't have any of the nostalgic feelings that I imagine that this book would bring up for a reader who does have those experiences. However, I did find the entire camp setting and the other campers and the different activities that they did really fun. It really did seem like an adult, like Disney movie, like kind of style dream. And Garland herself was a really fun character to get to know. She is, however, the only narrator that you get to know, it is a single POV romance. I imagine that's because the book is trying to set up like potential multiple romantic interests for Garland. And so to immediately have given anyone another dual POV would kind of like take away from that. However, I would argue that you know from just the blurb of the book that there is going to be some interesting things happening there, and I don't know how much of a reveal it really was. I digress. You guys know me, I prefer a dual POV romance. That's not what this is. And that ends up for me having a downside that I just always say when it's a single POV, which is that this is Garland's story. Garland is in a place where she is struggling with who she is, what she wants out of life, and how to become a stronger version of herself after everything that's happened to her. And now like having this realization that she might have feelings for Stevie and what that means for her own identity. And again, she's 32, so for her, you know, she spent a great deal of her life thinking one way and is now having to like change the way that she thinks about herself. There is some really interesting stuff that has happened and is happening in Stevie's life. We just don't really get access to it. And with Stevie as a character being kind of more reserved with her emotions than Garland is, you don't really get access to those either. And so that I was like, oh, there could have been so much interesting stuff there to explore that we only get to see through Garland's eyes. And that was kind of like, oh, sad. But I have that complaint every time it's a single POV romance, so at this point you could probably just skip past this part of the review. You know what I'm going to say and how I feel about it. I think the thing with this book for me is that it also had other components, just like romance tropes, that I'm not super into. And the first one kind of goes back to an early comment where I said that the love triangle isn't really a surprise, considering that from like the moment that Stevie and Garland meet, like sparks are flying. It is very, very much a situation of insta love. Even if Garland can't really recognize it necessarily as romantic insta love, it's just immediate. There is just sparks flying and a connection, and they just get really close really fast. And that for me is not my favorite thing. I'm not a fan of insta love. I love to see a relationship grow, and while they do grow closer over the course of the novel, it's very much just like it starts off as a really, really tight and strong unit, and it doesn't really change. And for me, like this novel literally takes place over a week of summer camp, right? So it's just like, okay, wow, that was a lot. And I don't like that anytime that happens in a romance novel. It's not my favorite trope. There's also a potential that I was unfairly comparing it to 1,000 Miles, because if you haven't read that one is a romance between, it's a second chance romance where these two people have had a kind of awful breakup and they are forced back into a road trip together. So they are literally stuck in the same car with all of their metaphorical baggage and physical baggage as they like basically drive across the country. And so that one was like really emotionally intense and really emotionally invested and involved, and there was a lot of things to work through. And along with Bridget Morrisey's very like cute and sometimes over the top humor, this book is very different. Like it starts off cute and happy and funny, and it stays cute and happy and funny, and there is some self-discovery along the way, but it is primarily like positive and strong and uplifting, and that's not a bad thing. I don't want to say that it is. This is a very, very happy, cutesy book. But when you're comparing it to what I loved about 1,000 Miles, it just wasn't what I was expecting, and I did expect, I think, a little bit more depth than I got. Not every romance novel has to have that depth, I'm not saying that, but again, that comparison in my head, I was constantly making it, and it just wasn't what I expected. There were points where I felt like this book leaned a little bit like heavy into the exposition of self-discovery. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the moments of self-discovery came with like, you know, really philosophical conversations with a knowledgeable other person, or like kind of like a monologue about how like I'm gonna be stronger now or whatever. And I have no issue with self-discovery books. I think that they're wonderful. I think this book is wonderful. I have an issue when it just like, there's a lot of dialogue, like expositional dialogue about it, or like a monologue that just seems to go on and on and on and on and on. And I'm like, okay, like we can move along. Like we don't need this whole like really, really like movie moment here in this book. That tends to bore me, and I felt like that did happen a couple of times in this book, and like more than once, and I'm like, all right, I'm really happy for you, but like this dialogue is too much, and it starts to feel fake at a certain point, and I'm just like, move it along. I don't want it to sound like the things that I didn't expect were bad things, and so I really do have to say, if you're looking for like a positive, uplifting, you know, book about self-discovery and childhood nostalgia, and there's a really excellent storyline that I wish it had a little bit more space but was so sweet, between Garland and her sister Dara, and the things that they've gone through in their past and how close they are as sisters, and the making of a very all ages queer found family during this week of the summer camp too. It's not just Garland and Stevie's relationship that we're exploring, it's mostly, but there are side characters that are really wonderful. It's a very positive feeling book, so that summer feeling, it's a very positive feeling that you're left with. There's not moments of high dudgeon, you know, that like 75% of the way fight that you expect doesn't really happen. It's really just a book about loving each other, loving yourself, loving your friends, loving your family, and becoming a strong, good, best version of yourself. And so while it didn't have the depth that I think 1,000 Miles had, doesn't make it a bad book. This could be exactly the kind of book that you're looking for right now. Something that will just make you have positive feelings and not a lot of stress. I think the major thing about this book will just hinge on how you feel about insta-love. If that is a total no-go trope for you, I wouldn't pick this one up. But if you are lukewarm about it, or if you really love it, then I would say go ahead and do pick up this book, because if you are in that space where you just want, like you're out in the sun, or you're feeling good because it's getting warmer out because spring is here and summer is coming, like this is just a really great book to like sit with in the sun or the warm weather and just experience lots of nice and fun feelings. So I think that's my line. As this is an ARC review, this book is not quite yet out if you are watching this video right when I posted it, but I'm sure you can pre-request it at your local library, your local bookstore, make a note for yourself to get notified when it comes out if you're interested, and, you know, sit back and relax and feel some positive vibes. That summer feeling, it's coming. It's like 80 outside right now, and I'm really pumped about it. So, also pumped about finishing another ARC on time. So glad to have this out to you guys, and we'll see if I can keep this going. I have positive vibes. Thanks, guys. Bye.